The John Cena Farewell Tour is officially on. As we know, John Cena did announce his retirement at WWE Money in the Bank in Toronto. And now that sets up a big 2025 for Cena and a lot of other people in WWE, perhaps, depending on who Cena faces on his retirement tour in WWE next year. And that's the big question is, I think they mentioned 30 to 40 different dates for Cena. Doesn't necessarily mean he's going to have 30 to 40 matches, but he will have quite a few matches before he retires, which seemingly seems like it will be at the end of next year. So the question is, who is he going to face along the way? But most importantly, who is John Cena going to face in his last match in WWE? And I thought it'd be interesting to go through and see who would be the best candidates for Cena to face in his final match ever, whenever that is, whether that's next December, whenever. Who's it going to be? And I think there are a lot of worthy choices. Now, I will start off here. I will tell you, I have 4 people that we're going to discuss in detail. But there is the thought that maybe Cena should go the route of going with an up-and-comer, right? Someone like a Bron Breakker, Carmelo Hayes, people like that, who clearly have a lot invested in the future of WWE. Like, WWE wants to put these people as sort of the next big stars, right, of the company. And the problem with picking that right now, remember, we're doing this basically a year and a half away from Cena's actual retirement match. The problem with doing that now is you don't exactly know where these people are going to be by that point, and it's the same with these 4 people that we are going to talk about. You don't know what storylines they're going to be included in or anything like that. So could we see a situation where Cena decides, hey, I'll put over someone that's on the rise on the way out? Certainly possible. There's a lot of interesting possibilities with that, whether it's a breaker. I mentioned Carmelo. And the thing is, you don't know who could be kind of that next breakout star by this time next year. And so it's hard to kind of pick one of those right now. And I think because it is the magnitude of someone like John Cena having a last match, can those guys get to that point to where it feels like, the right setting for that match? I think you can have those matches along the way. You can have a Cena versus Breakker or Carmelo Hayes, and I know I'm forgetting people. Those are just the 2 guys that pop off the top of my head. You could have those matches still on that road to the final match. But I don't know that they're going to be the ones that are the most impactful for a final John Cena match, as it could be for these other 4. And yes, don't worry, I did pick one, and we'll get to that person last. But I will tell you, I think there's a lot of interesting thoughts out there regarding a John Cena match against Cody Rhodes as the final one, right? And I think it's sort of being looked at as the passing of the torch possibility, where you have John Cena passing the torch to Cody Rhodes, right? These 2 guys who are sort of defining their particular era. Cena defined his era. Cody is starting to be the person that sort of defines this new era for WWE since he did win the championship from Roman Reigns at WrestleMania 40. I don't know that you need to have John Cena pass the torch to Cody Rhodes. I feel like the torch has already been passed to Cody Rhodes. And remember, too, Cena did play a role in that at WrestleMania 40. He was interfering in the match just like The Undertaker was, and others as well. So I don't know that you necessarily need to have that passing of the torch match between Cena and Cody, because, again, we're a year and a half away from this. I feel like Cody's already in that position where he is the guy. He doesn't necessarily need a match against Cena to be the guy. Now, I say that, he doesn't need a match against Cena as the final match. Could we still get a John Cena versus Cody Rhodes match at some point during this retirement tour? Not a bad idea, because you really could kind of play with that idea and say, all right, this is kind of that official dream match type scenario for some people where you have these 2 at the points they're at. Cena's on the way out. Cody's already up, but people can still say he's still on the way up. And there's a lot you can do to play around with that. But I don't know that as of right now, I would pick John Cena versus Cody Rhodes as the match for the final match. Now, again, we're all doing this just based off of what we'd like to see. We're all going to have different answers, and that's okay. But it's kind of fun to think about these different possibilities. So I don't know that I would go Cody right now, just because I think that there, again, are some better options. And I feel like Cody doesn't necessarily need that as the final match, right? But you could also say, well, how does the title tie in and all this other stuff? I think that could be interesting. And we're going to get to that when we get to the choice at the end, because that will kind of play into the title and all of that factors into it. One of John Cena's best opponents ever, and I would argue it is his best opponent ever, is CM Punk, because I think they've had the best matches together. And sure, there will be people who will say that there are other opponents that maybe are kind of the more memorable John Cena opponents, and who knows, one of those might actually pop up here in a second. But CM Punk, I think, and John Cena have had the most memorable matches of any Cena combination out there. They had this match, as you see on the screen, the Money in the Bank 2011 match, still one of the best matches for my money in WWE history. I think it's one of the best matches out there given the setting, right? You had Cena going into Chicago, Punk leaves with the title. The follow-up was a bit of a mess, but the match itself and the whole environment around it was about as perfect as it gets. And, they would still have another very, very good match together, and multiple very, very good matches together that I, still remember as just some of those that, again, they make for those memorable moments that you're going to always look back on and say that was one of the biggest moments of John Cena's career. Even if he lost the match to Punk, it's still one of the most memorable ones out there. And so, yes, I think that Punk would certainly be, and we maybe heard him on commentary on Raw, on a promo on Raw recently, say that he'd love to get in the ring again with John Cena. And maybe that is a match, too, that you have somewhere along the way. But, again, we're talking a year and a half out. And so we don't know exactly where Punk's going to be at that point. And so I think it's, for me, I'd love to see this match again, but you also would see it knowing that you're not going to get exactly what you got previously, right? And so that's how it's going to be tough to sort of to juggle that a bit with what the expectations are going to be for a final match versus what we actually saw from Cena's opponent and whenever they were in the ring previously. So that's the tough challenge, is how do you keep expectations in check, knowing that are they going to have a 5-star match like they did 13 years ago at Money in the Bank? I don't know. But if you're talking about promo work, on the mic, all this, we love to have one more of those kind of sparring sessions between John Cena and CM Punk, because they would bring the best out of each other. But they are older now. This is not what it was, a decade ago. And so as long as we know that going in, yes, this could make for a very compelling final match for John Cena, making it CM Punk, because we know Punk would do everything he can to make the most of that opportunity. And that would certainly make for an interesting setup, just given the history between the two. However, I'm also going to cross CM Punk off of my list of potential final opponents for John Cena. And then for me, it came down to one of two choices. I think these are the two I would put ahead of a Cody Rhodes, CM Punk, Breakker. I mean, obviously the guys you can't get out there. I know people are like, hey, maybe Edge comes back, right? I'd love to see it. I thought the John Cena Edge feud, for me, that's right there with Cena and CM Punk. Like, the stuff Cena did with Edge was remarkable. Just tremendous stuff. And I know people are also saying, could Kurt Angle be in the mix? I just don't see Kurt Angle having that match with John Cena, especially a year and a half away from now, given the fact that we know the injury history with Kurt Angle and all this other stuff. Listen, in a perfect world, I'd love to see it. But I just don't know that Angle is there physically, especially when we're talking about, like I mentioned, a year and a half away. It is July 2024 as we're recording this. Cena's last match seemingly is going to come in December 2025 or somewhere around there. That's a long way away. So you've got to keep that in mind. So it came down to two options for me on picking who I'd like to see for John Cena's last match. And I think both are very compelling arguments, and I could go for either and be okay with it. But I will say that this is one that I think that I find more intriguing the more I look at it. Gunther, we know, is out there as a possibility because why? There would be a lot of things that you could play into this with Gunther. And I kind of see this as, you guys know, I mentioned it kind of with Sami Zayn at WrestleMania 40 as the Rocky Balboa, Ivan Drago situation for all you Rocky fans out there, where, it's kind of the scenario where you have this unbeatable sort of thing like Gunther, right? He's unbeatable. He's just the dominating force versus the person who's trying to take him out. And this is a different scenario because you have kind of Cena, on the way out here and all that. But I think it is one where at that point, a year and a half from now, Gunther being a world champion, a setting where you have Cena going into his final match to face a world champion Gunther with the opportunity for John Cena to break the world title holding record, right? That 17th World Championship, the one that has eluded him, and having to do it by going through the defining person now of professional wrestling in the Triple H era. It's professional wrestling versus sports entertainment, right? And that's not knocking John Cena as a wrestler, but you think about kind of the era that Cena defined versus Gunther says what in all these promos, everything he's doing. I mean, he said it kind of in the build to the SummerSlam match with Damian Priest. Gunther said, talking about this great sport. He always says that, but he talks about professional wrestling, like wanting to be kind of that defining person and bring prestige and honor back to the sport. If you have that setup where it is Cena's final chance to go into his last match, this is it. He doesn't get any more opportunities because he's not wrestling again. This is the final match. And we have Gunther as the world champion at this point in December 2025. And you have that match with Cena going in, trying to slay the giant that is Gunther. And perhaps this is part of a very long title reign. Who knows? Could Gunther win the title at SummerSlam or Berlin here soon and hold it all the way until then? We know Triple H likes his long title reigns, and we know he likes his Gunther long title reigns. So, could that be a possibility? I really like that idea because I think Gunther's promo ability has gotten so much better. He's still undervalued, in my opinion. He does such a great job really accentuating what it is he's trying to prove, right? As the professional wrestler. He's a wrestler. He's not a sports entertainer, anything like this. So I think you could have fun playing off of that. And if it is a scenario where the championship is in play, I think that Gunther is one of the best choices out there for John Cena's final opponent because it would make for what I think Triple H really likes. And it is that sports-like feel where it is like, hey, the new guard is in, right? But you have that old guard that has one last chance to have that opportunity to go out with a bang, like to go out on top. And so I think that would make for a very fascinating build to a John Cena versus Gunther match in that final setup. But ultimately, I think this may not be a choice that some people would make. But I do think this is probably the popular choice when it comes to who Cena's final opponent should be. Now, there's a lot of things that have to happen to get to this point. And there's a lot of things that could prevent this match from happening. But you guys know where I'm going when it comes to looking at the possibility of John Cena's last match being against Randy Orton. And I know there's people say, hey, we've seen that so many times before. Did they have matches that were as good as Cena's matches with Punk, Cena's matches with Edge? I don't know, maybe not. But for one final time, for these two guys to step into the ring in what could be a similar scenario to the one we just mentioned with Gunther. Now remember, we are talking this far out. Randy Orton's had the back issues. We don't know physically where Randy Orton is at December 2025. That's a long way away. But if you think about all the things that could be set in motion to get us to a John Cena versus Randy Orton match as the final match for Cena, it's kind of interesting when you think about it. Now, here's what would have to happen, in my opinion, to get us there, right? You would have to then maybe swap a scenario where if we want to do Cena versus Gunther, we could get that at WrestleMania 41 for the title. Now, the problem could be there. We've heard, I think Orton probably is the one that's mentioned it. I don't know if Cena's mentioned it or not, but one of the two I know has talked about it in detail. I think it's Orton. Wanting that match with the other at WrestleMania, right? This is the last chance. This is the last chance you have to do John Cena versus Randy Orton at WrestleMania. So it would be WrestleMania 41 because we know that's it for Cena. Now, you guys know the problem is for me, I would much rather see John Cena do something else at WrestleMania 41 if it is the scenario where one of the main events is The Rock versus Roman Reigns and the other is Cody Rhodes versus Randy Orton. Now, what could change that, as we know, is if they do go with Cody Rhodes versus The Rock. Then that opens up Randy Orton. You're not doing Cody Orton. Maybe you do that before you get to WrestleMania 41. But I think there's still something there where the rivalry, the history between John Cena and Randy Orton, if you get to this point to where perfect scenario, best case situation here, where Randy Orton is good to go. He's still going right along. Physically, he's okay. And Randy Orton does eventually win that championship. Maybe it's from Cody. Maybe it's from somebody else. Maybe Orton gets another run with the title. I think winning it from Cody as heel Orton would be something that's the most fascinating of the possibilities. But if that's the case, and you have Cena in the same scenarios we talked about with Gunther, going into the final match against his biggest rival, Randy Orton, with the chance, maybe Orton is just the dastardly heel. Because remember, too, by that point, Raw's gone to Netflix, WWE may be entering the new Attitude Era. I mean, we could really just get, one final match that, yes, these guys are older now. There are physical limitations. But for one last time, they could put it together to put together just a very special match. Could they pull out all the strings to do that? Absolutely they could. But like I said, it's all going to come down to the physical elements here. And are both guys in a place where they can make this what they want it to be? I think that's the question. But like I said, that is where you have to sort of have different things play out. And could you still do Cena versus Orton at WrestleMania 41 and then still do Cena versus Orton as the final match? Sure you could. But I think maybe there is something there to where you only do one and you wait for it to be that final match where it is one last time, John Cena, Randy Orton. Whether it's for the title, I think that adds a big sort of, I think it adds more for the match than if not. If that's the chance for Cena to break the record, and let's say Cena does it or doesn't do it, I mean, that to me is, about as high stakes as it gets, right? One guy's retiring, but does he retire as the champion? Now, I know people say, well, that's kind of the same thing they did with Sting, but that's a tag team situation and all of that. So I would like to see Cena versus Orton, the final match. That's my guess right now. That's my choice right now, a year and a half away. But remember, plenty of time to change our opinion on this because we got a long way to go to figure out where all these people are going to be. Cody, CM Punk, Gunther, Randy Orton, and everyone else that could be a possibility for John Cena in December of 2025. And my guess is we will be updating this probably multiple times before we get to December 2025 based on where storylines are at and all that. But for now, if we're projecting ahead, doing long-term booking, all this other stuff, I think I would go with either Cena versus Orton or Cena versus Gunther as the final match with the title somehow added into the mix. But I know there's some people as well who would like to see Cena versus Cody, Cena versus Punk, Cena versus Breakker, Cena versus Edge, Cena versus Angle. Everybody's mentioning names out there. But I don't know what you guys think. Let me know in the comments below. Who would you pick? As of right now, you have the right to change your opinion until we get there. But as of right now, who do you think should be John Cena's last match in WWE? The final opponent for John Cena. Who should it be? Let me know your thoughts. As always, hit the subscribe button, hit the like button on your way out as well. And I appreciate you guys. As always, love the feedback. And let me know your pick for John Cena's final opponent as the last time is now.